Thank you. All right, hello everyone. Thanks for making it out, and I hope you're ready for another awesome GopherCon Europe. Before I begin, let's give a huge thank you to Matt, Donna, Ali, and everyone else, everyone behind there for making this happen again this year. So, as you may have heard, I'm Cameron, and I'm the product lead for the Go programming language at Google. In this presentation, I'm going to tell you all about the business of Go. And generally what I mean by that is I'm going to tell you what we, the Go team, think about our market, our stakeholders, our strategy, and our future as a programming language. Before we do that, just a second about me. If you don't know who I am, that's totally normal. I've been on the Go team for about 4 years now. Prior to Go, I led product for the Google Cloud SDK, including like languages and frameworks integrations. And before Google, I was a software engineer at a high-frequency trading firm where I built low-latency trading systems in C++ and Java. And I didn't really use Go until I joined Google, but I became a huge fan almost instantly. And now I'm lucky enough to lead product for this, exceptional team, and it's just really the highlight of my career, and in large part because of the dedicated community like folks like you in this room. So thank you for making my life fun. All right, so one thing that people sometimes wonder when I tell them that I'm the product lead for Go is, well, why does Go even have product managers? How many of you are thinking that right now? Oh, not many of you? Wow. All right, well, I sort of wondered it. What product management even is sort of hard for me to define because the role and responsibilities sort of differ so much between companies and products and roles, and even within Google, it really varies quite a bit. So I skimmed through some books that I have in search of this answer. What is a PM? And nothing really satisfied me. But I did find this one pithy statement in this random internal document at Google that I really liked. Product managers deliver the right experience to the right market at the right time. And then they do a lot of other things too, like lead the cross-functional team or lead public messaging. So I always like to leave a caveat at the bottom that says everything else too. But this main sentence covers a lot. So I want to break it down real quick. So first, the right experience. And what I think this means is that product managers define what the product is and why we're building it, but not necessarily how it's implemented. So the what means understanding user requirements and the value that users get from your product. The why means understanding the bigger business context. Why does this further our goals as a company or an organization? And then implicit in both the what and the why is understanding what success looks like. How do we know we're on track? How do we measure progress? The right market. So this is an understanding of the broader market context in which our product competes and adds value. It's also an understanding of the customer segment that we're targeting. So this is important because it enables us to make trade-offs and sort of understand our priorities. If you try to be the best at everything for everyone, you'll probably end up average at everything. So you have to know what you're trying to accomplish, for whom, why it matters, and then guide your decisions accordingly. And finally, the right time. And here we mean we've got to prioritize. Based on that market context and target customer segment we defined in the previous step, this is how we define our roadmap, this is how we pick between competing priorities, and this is how we lead successful launches. So I'm going to step through each of those three things for Go. The right experience, the right market, the right time. But I'm going to switch around the order just a bit because I think it makes a little more sense to talk about the market before everything else. So let's look at what we know about Go's market. So before anything else, I want to introduce this product adoption lifecycle. How many of you have seen something like this curve before? cool, yeah. It's nothing particularly deep, but it's a really useful way to sort of divide your market into segments of users based on when they adopt your product, because that can give you a lot of insights into their needs. Innovators and early adopters come first, and they have certain characteristics, and then the rest of the market may or may not follow, but if they do, they have their own characteristics. Now, building on that some more, these innovators and early adopters are what we think of as the early market. And the early market is tolerant. They're tolerant of incomplete products. They respect real innovation. They want to try new stuff, right? The mainstream market, on the other hand, they're more demanding. Sure, they like innovation too, but they don't care quite like the early market does. Instead, the mainstream market is more interested in convenience and complete solutions. The incentives are sort of different. Now, in between these two markets is what we call the chasm. The thing about the chasm is that the vast majority of products will spend their whole existence in the early market unable to cross into the mainstream. So crossing the chasm is actually this really big deal for any product. Now, I bring all of this up because programming languages, they follow this life cycle too, just like any other product. The vast majority of languages, they never get past the early market, but then a few do. And that provides really meaningful context on their users and the overall market. So for fun, I asked Gemini, what are some well-known examples of products that didn't cross the chasm? And apparently Segways are one, which I don't really have too much thoughts on. But Google Glass seems right. Did anyone own one of those? Oh, no? I owned one of those. What about a Microsoft Zune? Anyone own one of those? No, I owned one of those too. 3D TVs? Okay, one person. I didn't own one of those. No, never would. Okay, so if you're intrigued by the value of the product adoption lifecycle, you might wonder next, well, how am I supposed to tell where I am in the curve? And that's when the shape of the curve has some value. These segments represent some specific proportion of the total market. So you can imagine if your product has 10 million users, or your market has 10 million users, and your product has 1.6 million of them, you're past the chasm. Which begs the next question. How do you know the size of your market? And how do you even know what your market is? Well, in programming languages, one way to work this out is to think about the problem domain that you're addressing. So how we define a problem domain is itself kind of a really core strategic decision, because you don't want something really broad, because then you won't properly account for sort of incompatible constraints and priorities. And you don't want something so narrow so that you're creating all of this undue fragmentation or overhead, both for yourself and your users. And for Go, the problem domain we focus the most on is cloud. So Go addresses general productive server needs in any environment, cloud or not. But more and more of these workloads are or will be cloud-based over time. And in programming languages, where users rarely go back to rewrite existing software, the cloud is where we can look forward and ensure that we're really providing maximum value on a forward-looking basis. So when we look at where Go sits in the cloud problem domain, when we look at the size of the market, how much of it Go has captured, its growth moving forward, it's clear that Go crossed the chasm some years ago. So first, this is tremendous. Crossing the chasm is a really big deal in any product, as I said, but for programming languages, it's an even bigger deal. As I keep saying, because programming language adoption is so slow and deliberate, it can take a decade or longer for programming languages to cross the chasm, and that's assuming that it happens at all. And second, since we know that we're where we are in the adoption curve, we know that the next cohort of Go cloud developers are going to prioritize things like convenience and complete solutions. So now we know our target audience. Now, thinking about what a complete solution might mean, how many of you are familiar with the DevOps infinity loop diagram on this slide? All right, almost all of you. I think it's a decent way to sort of describe the broader software development lifecycle. You can think of the loop on the left as the inner dev loop, where you're writing code, iterating quickly, looking for quick feedback and productivity. And then you can think of the loop on the right as the outer loop, the one where you've deployed your code into production, and then you're sort of monitoring it and operating it. And when we think about how to create complete solutions, one way we think about it is we think about solving end-to-end across this whole thing, inner and outer loops. So say that we want to solve for developer velocity, one of Go's signature priorities. So Go has all of these features and tools and libraries that take everything into account to maximize your team's developer velocity, beginning from when they're writing their code to when they've pushed it into production to when they're operating it reliably thereafter. We provide these IDE integrations that go pretty deep, including our own plugin for VS Code. This helps make it easy to leverage the features of the rest of the tool chain. We have built-in formatting, a built-in test framework, a built-in debugger. And we do this for a variety of other problems. So developer velocity was one of them, but we do it for security, for performance, for portability, and more. In fact, one of the original motivations for Go was to actually build a platform solving for the whole software development lifecycle. Because the origins of Go were all about solving Google's problems with scale, we necessarily had to think about all of this stuff holistically and with an eye towards complete solutions, even from that stage. But now that we're on this other side of the chasm, those decisions and that vision, they continue to fuel our growth and suitability for this next phase of the market. So now that we have a sense for our market, right? We know our problem domain, our adoption curve, the users we're targeting and what their needs are. We can think a little bit more about what's the experience we're trying to create for them. And why? Why do we want to do that? And can we measure or sort of track how well we're doing it? So a corollary question to that is, who cares? For Go, there are two groups who care. First, it's you. I hope. All our users, our contributors, our community, right, our package maintainers. So we'll call this one Go users. So this group wants to productively build production-grade software that solves problems and which people use so that your businesses are successful and you all remain gainfully employed. This group is successful when, one, you're productive and happy, and then two, your software is secure, reliable, and performant. The other big stakeholder is Google. Google funds Go, and it wants a return on its investment. And there are two categories of return here. First, Google uses Go extensively for its own internal workloads. So for this, Google is successful when, one, its internal developers are productive and happy, and two, its internal infrastructure is secure, reliable, and performant. So these are the exact same things that Go users everywhere are looking for. Some of this was born, some of this is born from its sort of internal culture, its early mission, but really this is what's good for business. All right, the second category of return, and the one that's probably more interesting, is that it turns out that a lot of Google's business relies on external developers. So Google has these developer platforms. You can think of Google Cloud or Gemini or Android, and they rely very directly on external developers for their success. And then there's these other parts of Google's business, the ones that are not tied to developers, but they're still indirectly tied to developers. So I'll tell you what I mean. For something like Google Ads or Google Search to succeed, Google cares deeply about the internet being healthy, innovative, and useful. And it turns out that the things that make the internet healthy and useful are, again, the same things that Go users everywhere want. A properly functioning internet that users trust and use for more and more needs and services requires reliability and security. A growing internet with more use cases and innovation requires that developers are productive and able to easily scale their businesses. So ultimately, even if these developers never use Google's products, they they make the internet a better place. And that makes Google's role as the organizer of information even more important, which is good for business. Even if these developers never even use Go, Go still serves as an exemplar for good software engineering, where we see other languages and ecosystems sort of follow Go's lead, which makes the internet a better place, which is good for business. So let's take a look at how these priorities apply to Go more specifically. How we position Go as providing value to our stakeholders, you and Google. In these 3 rows, you can think of this top row as sort of stuff relating to productivity. It's quick to get started, it's quick to iterate, quick to build real, scalable production applications. And that all translates into faster time to value for you. So if your business was doomed to fail, the faster you know it, the better. If your business is a great idea, the faster you do it, the better. And then the more successful you are, the more successful Google is. The more likely you are to spend money on Google Cloud, or build an Android app, or add value to the whole internet. The second row is about reliability, which includes security and compatibility and all the stuff that reduces your long-term maintenance and operation burden. The less the burden, the lower your total cost of ownership, and the more time and resources you have to focus on the new stuff to grow your business. And again, as you can imagine, the more time you spend on moving your business forward, the more successful your business, the more you invest in your business, and ultimately, the more value to Google and its priorities and its long-term growth. And the third row is about the cloud. Go is purpose-built for the cloud. The libraries and the integrations and the architectures that Go enable, they were meant for the cloud. They weren't like retrofitted for it later. So this means that you can realize the cloud's benefits faster and easier than you can in other languages, because there are more complete, convenient solutions for creating cloud services, which, as we know, is what users in the mainstream market demand. So again, the more successful you are, the more successful Google is. So how do we know we're on track? Well, one thing that we know is that we get really extraordinary feedback from our users. We consistently see really high customer satisfaction in our surveys, levels that are practically unheard of in the industry. And happier developers and operators mean higher retention, more successful customers, and a more successful Google. And happy developers lead another important metric, which is adoption. So I'll just caveat here that there are a lot of different ways to estimate how many Go developers there are, and it's so difficult to pick one particular way of doing this. But in this case, I've taken the proportion of respondents who report using Go on Stack Overflow's annual developer survey and then multiplied it by Slashdata's estimate for the number of developers worldwide in each given year, and then tried to triangulate with some other things. But when I do this, things look really strong. We had 4 times the number of developers in 2023 than we did in 2018. And between 2022 and 2023, we took on 1.2 million new developers. And we're gaining ground. While the developer population at large grows, Go is one of only 2 languages that grows faster, meaning that we're targeting the right use cases, providing the right value, and growing for reasons that go beyond just the larger growth in software engineering. Rust, the only language that's growing proportionally faster, is growing off a much smaller baseline than Go. So what Go is doing here as a language that has already crossed the chasm is really remarkable. And we see Go really thriving in open source, which really bodes well as a leading indicator of what we think we'll see in industry next. So I've said this a few times, but I'll emphasize it again. Programming language adoption, especially when you view it in the aggregate, it's just fundamentally slow. A lot of stuff has already been written, and developers continue to maintain or improve that stuff. And it would be really inefficient for these developers to just rewrite the workloads in a new language. Nobody wants to fix what isn't broken, and we don't want that either. But our objective, sort of our opportunity, is to target new applications. So on this slide, we plot out the proportion of pull requests on GitHub by language per quarter for each of the major statically compiled memory-safe languages: C#, Java, Rust, and Go. So it isn't aggregated over like the last 20 years, like you'll find in some benchmarks, or surveys that say like what languages do you use. This is like a quarter by quarter breakdown, sort of like a first derivative. And it's of actual work, like measured in pull requests. And as you can see, Go's ascent in red, it's really pronounced. And in the last quarter, it even beat Java. And that's really just so exciting for two reasons. First, because Go is growing in open source, it'll mean that there's more libraries for developers to use. That furthers the flywheel of productivity for all Go developers, and then furthers our vision of this really productive, secure platform for building production systems. And even more than that, it means that Go and the Go community are well positioned for the future. They're ready for those big shifts in technology that happen from time to time. So Go and the Go ecosystem are better than ever. They're ready for those moments when new code is written. Which brings me to this last section, the last part of our original statement on PMs delivering the right experience to the right market at the right time. If we want to continue to deliver value to our stakeholders, what should we prioritize? What should we do next? Well, as I showed you in the first section, Go for cloud. It's past the chasm and it's growing in the mainstream market, which is really great because the cloud still has a long way to go. Estimates I've seen in analyst reports put the cloud market growth at 15% compound annualized growth rate for at least the rest of this decade and likely much longer. Older legacy workloads will steadily move to the cloud, and some of those will find value in Go, or they'll remain in the languages they were in. New companies will sprout up sort of with new workloads born in the cloud, and a large proportion of them will find value in Go as well. And we'll continue to provide them complete solutions, productivity, production-grade software. But returning to that early discussion on problem domains, occasionally there are these new problem domains that emerge. And these are really important for programming languages because they present those opportunities where a lot of new code is written. Programming language adoption, slow as it is, sometimes, though, there has these watershed moments that establish these sort of new ecosystems and dramatically accelerate adoption. You can think of like the 1990s and this proliferation of the growth of the internet as this opportunity for like Java for enterprise servers, or the 2000s where Python for web servers grew, or last decade, the 2010s, where Go sort of hit its stride for cloud. And a key point here is that when we solve a new problem with an existing language, we can create a new language ecosystem. And if we can create a new language ecosystem from an existing language, that means that different ecosystems for the same language can coexist at different points in the adoption lifecycle. So a great example of this is Python, where the web server's problem domain has long been established and is so extremely mature that it's kind of almost finished as an option. And then for other use cases, like data science and generative AI, Python is at different stages of the life cycle. For data science and sort of traditional machine learning tasks, Python's on top. It's the language for this, well into the mainstream market, no question about it. And for generative AI, which is just too new of a space to really assess well, it's clearly got a lot of traction. But not yet to the mainstream market, because the mainstream market doesn't quite exist yet. So I say all of this because generative AI is a new problem domain. It's an early market, and so far Python is in the lead, but it's not across the chasm. And when we think about Go's future, and we think about how to address new problem domains, we kind of see an opportunity in this. More specifically, we see an opportunity for Go to meet the demand for production AI use cases, not data scientists, or not data science, or as a head-to-head competitor with Python. Production AI, as a complement. So I'll show you what I mean here. I'll disclaim again that generative AI is still so new that a lot of the norms have yet to be established. But But one thing we've seen is that Python has done really well in sort of every aspect. And that's because Python is the language of data scientists, and at this early stage of that life cycle, that success in data science has been the most transferable to the rest of the pieces of this new domain. So it's great for working with data, developing models, using its rich ecosystem of data science libraries. If you simplify the AI process into these 3 steps on the right of the slide, the data work, the modeling work, and the production serving work, Python, really is the best tool for the job for this part in blue. The part where you build models, fine-tune them, explore them further. And so by virtue of being good in that part, Python has by default excelled in other parts as well. But these other parts of the cycle, the data processing, the data preparation, the model serving in your product, this is the part where you want a production-grade language. And here, Python isn't really the right tool for the job anymore. It's not really meant to scale. The features of static languages like type checking, compilation of machine code, all of that, those are the things that enable scaling to large programs, large development teams, and large systems. In fact, production systems require their own ecosystems of libraries and tools to enable developers and operators to sort of work effectively at scale. And this is actually where Go really shines. Reliability and security, performance and scalability, low maintenance and operational costs. So this is where Go is the right tool for the job. So perhaps not surprisingly, Go developers think this too. Many of them have started writing AI-powered applications in Python because that's where the tutorials online are doing. And what many early SDKs focused on. But then they hit a wall once they want to get to production. One respondent to our survey put it like this: fast compilation time, statically typed variables, concurrency. I'm annoyed by the amount of type errors in Python. Writing our services in Go would dramatically decrease the amount of bugs and make our services faster and more durable. Indeed, that's right. That's the value of Go. And that's my ask of you, the Go community. Our ecosystem is larger and more robust than ever. And in this new world of generative AI, we've seen a lot of really high-quality tools and libraries emerge. Ollama, Local AI, LangChain Go later today, GenKit. Many of them, they're all written in Go, and they demonstrate the value of Go in this new space. But this is one of those moments where a whole lot of new code is written. And we want more of this stuff. We want more libraries, more tutorials, more write-ups. Quality libraries and materials like that make everyone more productive. And they unlock new opportunities that we as the Go team could never do on our own. So I'll close with saying, though, that I'm really confident that we'll succeed. And that's really because of you, the Go community. So remember, Google funds Go, but Go is an open source project that belongs to all of us. There are hundreds of thousands of Gophers around the world who meet up, they come to conferences like this because they love Go. And together, I really can't wait to see what we do in the next problem domain and all the ones that follow. And that's it. Thank you.